Welcome, welcome. So, we're here today to discuss branding in Web3, and I have two brilliant guest speakers with me today, Jaime Schwartz, Web3 branding expert, Brand Therapy, and Rebecca Kaplan, Web3 UX and marketing expert. So, Jaime, would you like to start off by introducing yourself and Brand Therapy?
Sure. As you said, my name is Jaime Schwarz. I initially spent about 15 or so years as a copywriter and creative director in advertising agencies, and then built my own shop called Pro For Bono that was focused on product development for nonprofits. And what that led to was long conversations with founders. And one of them said, "This feels like therapy." I was a psych major. I was originally going to be a clinical psychologist like my father before me. And so that was interesting to hear and wouldn't leave my brain, and started thinking about, well, it wasn't therapy for them, it was therapy for the brand. But what the hell is brand therapy? And from scratch, about 5 or 6 years ago, started building this discipline, which is a real skill stack of marketing, positioning, strategy, psychology, organizational design, product and business development. Basically, what brand therapy is brand perspective positioning. So strategy and positioning in and of itself is a long storied discipline of almost half a century long, starting in England in the 60s and 70s before coming to America. But it stops at brand guidelines. Here's your tone of voice. Here's your look and feel. Go reference it. The goal of brand therapy is to simulate brand consciousness, to bring that brand to life and put it in the back of your head. The same way that when you run with scissors, you can hear your mom in the back of your head. You are always running with scissors when you're running a company. And the
Mm,
voice in the back of your head should be your brand. Whoa, hey, this is what we believe. This is what we do. And now that we're entering into this Web3 world of immersion, blockchain, and AI, brands are literally speaking for themselves now. ChatGPT has made, well, and all the other transformer platforms have made any brand capable of existing in a conversational platform. That means we're not leaving social media, but we're adding the conversational media era to
mm,
existence. That means that you can talk with Tony the Tiger, or whenever you talk with a brand, it doesn't even matter if it says it's a brand or not. Like people that called Air Canada and were like, "I'd like this discount," and the AI said, "Sure, here's this discount that I just made. I hallucinated," and the judge said, "Nope, AI said it, but it's your company, so it's the same thing as an employee saying it." So we even have laws on the books saying if your brand is talking, it's an employee. But there's so much you can do with that. A brand is actually uh, the only employee that will never leave a company. It's kind of like
mm,
the chief purpose officer. So how do we take advantage of that? How do we build that up? So brand therapy was perfectly positioned for this about a year and a half ago when ChatGPT and all the others started coming along. So I built the Brand Therapist GPT. And if you enter in a bunch of your information about your brand, it will turn into your brand voice, and you can start having that conversation back and forth. And the huge benefit is now that we're in this space, as the brand is able to speak for itself, it's also able to listen for itself and translate what internally the company's thinking to consumers and what consumers are saying, social listening wise, to the brand back internally. You now have a brand that sits exactly in between company and consumer, exactly between product and market. So the brand can be your guide to product market fit and to product market shift the company to keep you there. So
mm.
that discipline has been built over the past 5 or 6 years. I've been doing it with AI for the past year. And along the way, at the same time as I was developing this, I also filed the oldest patent in the NFT space for a system and method for identifying virtual products. So basically, anytime there is a mark, so think trademark, logo, watermark, brand mark, next to or accompanied by whatever the virtual product is, that's what I patented back in 2018. It was granted in 2022. I filed a number of continuations in PCTs since then to take advantage of, well, once you have a mark, we have smart contracts, blockchain, obviously. So that mark can be investigatable, it can be interactive.
Mm.
So you can allow a digital object or digital content to hold all the assets it needs to be sovereign, to autonomously defend itself, show off its rights, ownership, provenance, to allow that provenance to build over time, to collect social value, likes, shares, views, but also to add utility and add sentimental value for people who want to like add to an object. This painting has been passed down through 3 generations in my family. I would love to, chip it and add that provenance and make it all real and show the POAP that this was actually on the boat with Einstein when it was going from England to America in 1942. I can't, but hey, we can do that moving forward with objects now. So that plays into brand therapy as well, because of course brands can, once you have conversational media, that touch point can be anywhere. So you buy a digital Nike shoe, that shoe can forever speak from the brand's perspective, no matter what. So how do you brand authenticate? You buy a Rolex in Chinatown. That's now that everything's copy and pastable. How do you do that in an open web environment? That's what that authentication mark is for. So that's led me down a lot of different roads. If you can't find a good client, I make one sometimes. So I'm a co-founder 7 times over. Right now, I'm the chief strategy officer for Parallel Worlds, which is the world's first spatial transformation company within the digital transformation discipline. So we're a full reality stack. My patents are involved with that, but also a digital commerce company, 2 digital object world building companies, a geospatial digital twin of the earth company, AI company. We're all kind of mixed in together to create this full stack offering. And I'm also to act on the patent building a company called Marked, which is what the company that's folded into Parallel Worlds is. Marked is mark.art, mark.news, mark.ai, and mark.music. And it is enacting on the patent within those different disciplines. And then I'm on top of all of that, the co-founder of the Team Flow Institute, which is an organizational design company. Chris Hoyer, my co-founder, is an organizational design guru. Deloitte days, IBM days, Social Media Club back 20 years ago. He was the founder of that. And what we kind of brought together is the team science of Team Flow, developed by Dr. Jeff Van den Hout in Holland last decade, which gathers all the different parameters of weird. Apologize for that. Gathers all the parameters of the hidden the hidden frictions within any human interaction, is able to diagnose what's weak and what isn't. These are open communication, psychological safety, high skill integration, aligned personal goals, mutual commitment, and audacious team goal. Everything else that anybody may be working on falls under one of those 6 parameters, but together they allow for team flow to emerge. So we're working within this institute. We have formed a research department. We have a training course, and of course we're a consultancy. So we're able to assess the status of the ability of any team to team flow, recognizing the center of gravity of work is no longer the office. It is teams. Even if you're full-time in an office, the center of gravity is teams. So from a team dynamic perspective, how can we help maximize the momentum of decentralized teams? So long bio there, all done, but those are everything that I've been working on and where I come from.
Yeah, that's an amazing bio, by the way.
Thank you.
Or not, that's amazing.
Rebecca, I beg to differ. And so now if you want to go in and introduce yourself and talk about some of the innovation that you've worked on recently. I know just some of it are, building an education platform for Web3 learning, just, so much. So please speak to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Rebecca Kaplan. I actually do marketing and design for Web3 Enabler. And I am also the co-founder of Springfolio. Springfolio is a AI-powered design school where we upskill designers and we help them break into emerging tech like Web3 and AI. Before becoming a UX designer, I was leading creative teams as a marketing professional. I was shipping products alongside small and mid-sized teams. And I was dabbling in the Web3 space and realized that the experiences were really clunky. And even though I was really curious and excited by the possibilities, I found that I was having a really hard time just navigating and using the tools. But I wanted to, but I felt really blocked by that. And that was the push that I needed to kind of take that leap into product design. And since then, I've had the opportunity to work on many Web3 projects, which is really exciting. And I'm now part of Web3 Enablers team, which they're doing really exciting things, kind of bring businesses into the space, and being that bridge between the blockchain tools that they need and kind of like the everyday business processes that they have to interact in today. So yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. So if there are one or two Web3 oriented tools that that are commonly known, not something proprietary, that excite you the most as far as building a brand, what would it be?
I'm going to go right back to ChatGPT. Now that you can build your own GPT, like I said, I built the Brand Therapist GPT. You can position the personality of that interface, of that conversational interface, to be so many different things. So it's so simple to be able to just transform a voice into your own brand itself. I mean, that's freaky that that works, but it does. So I'm a big proponent of, the chat of your choice. If you're Claude 3 just came out and it's amazing. So if you're more Claude, Anthropic's a public benefit corporation. I'm very pro public benefit corporation. And there's Bard and all the others as well. So whatever works for you.
I have to say, I'm also super excited about that intersection of like Web3 and AI, something I'm keeping like a close eye on. I think AI can be kind of like the brain of blockchain, help streamline it, help make it really efficient. So I love that. And I think the ownership component when it comes to brand content is something that is really valuable for an organization, right? To kind of be able to own your own content, everything that's on the internet. Now, when you add AI to it, as you were mentioning, Jamie, it kind of helps to not have to necessarily like worry as much as like, oh, is this our business is going to be using my likeness without my consent, right? When you add blockchain to that, you get some of those protections. So I think the intersection of the two is really exciting.
Yeah, that intersection is rife with interaction on so many different levels. The fact that generative AI is here, there's also the birth of the end of truth. How are we supposed to trust anything?
Yes.
Blockchain.
Yes.
The more we decentralize these conduits that connect us, the more we have to lean on trust in centralized organizations because they're the sources of where those things come from. We basically need to get to the point where we have an IP API, a point where truly centralized IP, where we organizations have said this is owned, this is true, whatever that is, are then empowered by blockchain to cross the open web and still to be trusted. How am I supposed to trust something that just happened in Gaza, except for the fact that I see there's a CNN logo by it, and then once that's in the open web, how do I know that came from CNN?
Yes. And how do you know that even though it has a CNN logo, that is really from CNN, right? Like we live in today's world where everyone can replicate and make everything. And that's really scary, right? For a brand, it makes it almost impossible to stop misinformation at that point, which I think highlights the importance of the tool that you were speaking about earlier, right? That you're making and you're creating. So
Yeah. I mean, spoofing impersonation has just grown exponentially in terms of how it can happen based on media type, just, ways that it can happen without necessarily going recognized. And, obviously with brand management and, branding comes reputation management from the risk management perspective, as well as the promotional perspective and managing those trade-offs is in of itself an interesting challenge. But yeah, I mean, those centralized, sources of regulation are, do play a detrimental role. And so we do have to recognize that.
And there's a lot of benefit in generative AI. We're talking multiple years ago, the first candidate to use deepfake technology for good was an Indian candidate who would have had to translate and even couldn't translate what he was saying into all these different dialects. But he used AI to be able to say one thing in natively how it needed to be said for all those different populations. And then, of course, we have the Joe Biden call that just happened, which was not him speaking. And immediately that was made illegal. It's amazing how quickly our government can work when it's for them.
Yes, right. Yeah, but like everything, there's like two sides of the coin, right? There's like so much opportunity, so much innovation that can come with it. And we're seeing so many like interesting use cases. But there's always going to be people that try to abuse it and try to take advantage of the technology. That's just seems like human nature. So
yeah, the role of a CISO is going to exponentially grow in the coming years.
Oh yeah, so many implications for that. And yeah, I mean the job description of that is just gonna keep changing too. Like what it entails, how to be good at doing that. How to do that, effectively, what resources to draw from. And it's interesting, I guess, along with the lack of trust that can be formed by, generative AI and LLMs, that's also, a source of more accessible learning depending how you spin it and utilize it. And, knowledge is, essentially how to keep yourself safe, how to keep yourself successful in the midst of all this. Knowledge of IP being just one aspect of that. So seeing where that could, continue to build is just, has so many applications in of itself. I've seen and actually developed curriculum that explicitly leverage generative AI to get that, entire applied learning perspective. And so I see that as promise to in really anything in terms of how we absorb knowledge for anything, especially as it continues to shift. You can build for that increasingly easily. Nice.
I think
There's also,
sorry, you go ahead, Jamie.
It was a very small thing, so please go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, as you were mentioning the education component and like building the AI powered tool, we lean heavily on AI, and we teach our designers to leverage AI to become more efficient designers. But it's super important to understand like its limits. And I use it every day for so many different things, and my entire team uses it every day for so many different things. But there is this inherent bias within it, and as well as it does these things called hallucinations where it will just make up information. So it's so crucial to realize the potential, use it to just like be better, upskill yourself, right? Let it take you one step above where you are, but always double check the information. Always move cautiously through it, because it's almost built to please, and it will give you whatever you're looking for, whether it's right or wrong. So we're not quite at a place where we can like sit back and be like, AI, do that thing for me while I, take a nap or whatever. We need to still monitor very closely and understand that it has limits.
Yeah, Gemini just did a really interesting part of this when it comes to hallucinations are actually forced in on every level. The LLM is just sitting there, and all the coding that goes on top of it, regardless of the AI company that's doing it, they're the ones putting in this extra prompting and extra amount of hallucinations before we get to prompt in the first place. So it's always steered. You're never really usually working with a pure LLM. So when Gemini came out, immediately you had pictures of Nazis that were minorities, women, Asians. Like it was just like didn't make any sense that these people were in these Nazi uniforms because Bard or sorry Gemini had been trained to be race agnostic. Hey, it should be all right that every like the same reason we were complaining that nurses were only women and CEOs were only men. They fix that, and then it just comes out the other side wrong. So they immediately shut it off, and then they started like asking different questions once it was shut off. Like one of them was, and I forget who asked this, who's worse for society, Elon Musk or Hitler? And it was like, I refuse to answer this because they both do different things. And it was such an obvious thing to be like, it's Hitler, it's Hitler. But the AI had been shut off. So from a perspective reason to not be able to answer that and to pull back. So that balance is going to be with us for a very, well, forever. It's just the fine tuning is just going to get better.
I agree.
Well said. Yeah, I mean, it can be terrifying. Oh, yeah, see, I mean, super, super freaky about that. Yeah. So I would love both of your takes on privacy related risks. Whether from the perspective of brand and personal identity and otherwise. Data collection, data use, just how you are and are not presented and what say you have versus don't have ultimately in what remains private, if that makes sense. I would love your take on that.
There's a lot to unpack there and a lot of different directions to go in, but the biggest thing for me with all of this is that we're in one of those decision moments right now because we're having a convergent emergent moment as we move from Web 2 to Web 3, where granted already it's been a year's worth of the big boys and a few new ones coming up and just taking up all the oxygen. But it's still within our ability to craft and democratically shape what this is going to be. So a lot from the patent onward, I've been really focused on an open metaverse. But an open metaverse is chaotic. An open metaverse has a lot of trust issues. There's a reason why we're all happy to work in a lovely, safe, closed Apple environment because there's no security issues, and we'll pay those 30% fees, and we'll lose a lot of creative freedom. And there's no true ownership in the platform, but because you're just leasing content that sits on their platform. But it's safe. I could put my kid on it. If we are in charge of our own data, it's going to be a problem. But big centralized authorities, we saw what happened with all the NFTs and the rug pulls, and there's no, FDIC when it comes to that kind of stuff. So how do we balance that kind of stuff? And once again, blockchain comes in here, but chains are generally public, and you have to have a layer 2 or even a layer 3 to get to a private space. LLMs are just getting into the space where they're finally figuring out how to do firewalls. This company, Sophos.ai, just started introducing firewalls for the LLMs that you choose. Still very new, but overall, that big fight that I'm getting at is, do we want to have an open or a closed Web3? Because Web3 is an immersive space. We're moving from the 2D to the 3D, and we're moving from the keyboard and coding to conversational UX, thanks to AI. But is everything still going to be owned by the platform or not? So I've introduced a new term that I wrote an article about on LinkedIn to build off of KYC, which is KYP, know your product, and the data that then exists in the product itself. Because one of the benefits that we get in smart contracted, flash licensed, blockchained commerce is the chance to move from consumerism to prosumerism. Producer consumers. I buy something, I add value to it, and I sell it on. That's a whole nother kind of economy. And why is that important? In and of itself, it's a good thing, but it's also something to counter the attention economy, the surveillance economy that Web 2 is built on top of. To just say marketing and everything's free, aka you're the product. That built all of this stuff up of the data was so important, knowing every single step of what we did so much so that it knows to buy media for you before you know what you're going to do. That's still, people don't understand. There's no microphone in your phone. They know you that well, that they know what you're going to do before you do. That's a lot of data points making a lot of metadata. But if we move that from us being the product to us consuming and prosuming and focus the data on the products, it allows us to build a system that's moves away from the attention economy and focuses more on product development, both on a brand level and on a consumer level. And in that space, we can walk away from the surveillance economy and the whole idea of the value of knowing our lives. That's huge, but that's also like the chance of that happening is not big.
Well, I think that's a promise in the space, right? The promise is that you own all of your information, right? And like you mentioned, we're still building it, so it can go so many different ways. But to me, that's the promise. That's the attraction to it. And I love that you brought up product design because I was working in marketing, and what pushed me to become a UX designer was that I didn't want to just sell the products. I wanted to have an active role in building the interactions that we're using every single day. But it's been an interesting journey because believe it or not, companies they don't often build products based on their users' needs. They build products based on what they like, what they think their customers want to sell. They don't take the time to like ask questions from their users as to what they really want. And if you did that, you would know that if you advertise security, your product would do so much better, right? Even just making that small change, whatever you're building. So yeah, so it is interesting, but I think the promise for me in Web3 is that we get to own our own brand and our own data. And I hope that we do get to that point where each person does kind of have that authority over their own digital identity.
It's a big point when it comes to personal brands, because we're also moving into this, we've spent the past 20 years because of the attention economy moving into, well, social media economy, influencers and the influencer economy. And those are becoming the creators. And so there's a step that I want us to get to from creators to co-creators, but that idea of prosumerism was actually invented for social media, where an influencer comes along and takes somebody's post and then adds value to it by resharing it or adding their point to it or whatever person's content is. Their value as an influencer is then baked into that post, the social media. We get to now do that with products where the influence is in there of, take the example of like, if I get a soccer ball signed by Messi, it's worth a lot more now. But at the same point, you can do a POAP, proof of attendance. So that's a digital signature. This was in the presence of. I can take a music tour t-shirt and go take it to that concert. And my Taylor Swift t-shirt now says it was at these 3 concerts. That's a whole other value to add. But how we define ourselves as personal brands in a very, very simplified way is the brands we surround ourselves with. We're all just, NASCAR cars with just all the different brands on us. We define ourselves by aligning with the shared purposes that we have with the brands that we want to say, I'm with them because what they promote is something I believe in. And so we get to ride those coattails. And our shorthand for sharing what we believe in is purchasing products from the brands that we believe in.
Yeah, so promising. It's just, especially, it's International Women's Day, so I've been bringing this up from kind of a diversity and inclusion perspective too all day. But yeah, it's super promising, super, exciting mostly. And, despite all the, other risks, this is just an exciting space to be in. And I'm really glad to discuss it with you all and also end on this kind of positive note before we run out of time. So, but if you guys have anything final that you want to add.
Nothing. I think it's been awesome. Thank you so much for chatting about AI and blockchain and Web3. It's been real fun.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Yes, and as the guy in the room, happy International Women's Day to all. And I do think there is a huge benefit, just like everything else we've been talking about with Web3, as a potential for ownership. Just the same way that a lot of minority groups started grabbing onto Bitcoin during the ICO craze and saying, we're taking this back. We're building on top of this. And we're at a very wonderful crux point when it comes to empowerment of female populations, especially on the Western Hemisphere side, where way higher college graduation, way higher master's graduation rates for women over men. We actually have a male problem on that side, but separate issue. But that empowerment level is there, and there's a lot of inertia still to push through. I don't want to use the glass ceiling reference, but like just to keep going from the amount of buildup of knowledge, of insight, of collective wisdom, of collective wealth that is starting to build and bubble up, and how that's going to be brought to the fore in this new Web3 economy, however the economy takes shape, and how we still have a chance to define what these invisible hands of the markets are. I hope that invisible hand is a woman's.
Nice. I like that idea. Great.